Okay. All right. I do apologise that I might be just a few minutes late getting set up today. I was just organising a few things, but I've laid out my map because I wanted you guys to have something that you could visually see, so that I had something that was going to be a little bit easier to understand as I talk through this. Okay. All right, sound is working good. All right, we will start in a second. As always, start posting your questions or your comments or your feedback in the chat box right now. What I will do is always, with all of my videos, I will present everything to you first, and then I will go through the chat box and answer any questions you might have. And yes, welcome to the live stream. Okay, so let's start. Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and we're talking about monster tactics. This is the tactics for the Kobold. So this is a draconic-like creature, very small, usually aligns itself with either a stronger dragon or forms into large communities. Now, if you want information on the Kobold, you can have a look in the monster manual, and you'll find information on pages 195, gives you wing kobolds and the standard kobold and a little bit about them. Now, I'm not going to be covering wing kobolds today. I just want to talk about the basics for using the standard kobold rather than going into any other detail. Now, the first thing you need to note about kobolds is it does state that they have sunlight sensitivity, and because of that they're unlikely to go wandering around in the daylight. Okay, they live in dark places. They're going to avoid sunlight. They're going to avoid the daytime. So give them a lair or a location that's very dark. And also too, remember, when they go and do stuff, it's usually going to be at night. They're not necessarily going to be coming across, the party aren't going to be coming across kobolds in the middle of the day waiting on the road. Goblins might do that, but kobolds unlikely. They might come across traps that the kobolds have set, but unlikely going to experience a kobold band of any kind during the day. Now, kobolds absolutely love to set up traps. That's one of the favourite things for them, is setting up traps, making it difficult for somebody to get into their lair and also to capture prey or their victims. Now, kobolds are essentially very, very fragile in nature, so they're physically weak, they're rather vulnerable, which is why they tend to band together into large groups. And so when you're using your kobolds, try to work with a large group of kobolds rather than pitting up. So if you have a group of 5-player characters, don't try and throw in just 5 kobolds. You would usually have slightly more than that. Otherwise, it's really too even a fight, and that's in the mind of the player's characters, but actually it's going to be they're just going to steamroll right through these little kobolds. Okay, so bear in mind, try to use larger numbers. Now, because kobolds are physically weaker and rather vulnerable, and they will band into large groups, they'll also seek out, if they can, the protection of a dragon, whether it be an elder dragon, an adult dragon, a younger dragon, it doesn't matter. But they are going to be looking for somebody who's stronger, who can support them. Kobolds worship dragons. They have a reverence for them. So by all means, include in the end of your kobold campaign, if you're going to use kobolds, somewhere there would probably be a dragon and a dragon lair. Now, if kobolds are protecting a dragon's lair, when they place their traps, it's going to be heavily trapped, but when they place their traps, they'll be selecting traps that will not hurt, obviously, the kobolds themselves, but also will not hurt the dragon themselves, because that would defeat the purpose of trying to set the traps in the first place. So I'm going to give you a layout of a lair for a kobold. Now, this is not necessarily a dragon lair, but this is just how a lair might look for a kobold. Lots of very small passageways. Often passageways that are difficult for a medium-sized creature to move through, but very easy for a kobold. And then there'll be main passageways or main areas where a larger creature might be able to get through, or you'll find just cavities. One of my groups of players were playing through a location with kobolds just recently, and they were experiencing lots of standard passageways and then lots of little passageways coming off that, and they tried going down the smaller passageways, decided they were too dangerous because there were traps down there, and they avoided the entire area, not fully understanding that there were cavities within those smaller passageways where they would set up to sleep or to feed or just do what kobolds do. Okay, so when it comes to actually making any kind of attack with a kobold, I know it's really tempting to start using pack tactics and try and swarm the player characters with your little kobolds, but really don't do that. Remember, set up traps, lure them into the dragon's lair if they have the protection of a dragon, and use ranged attacks. They're much more likely to use ranged attacks and stay out of close quarter combat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out sort of a basic map for you. I've got a battle map. As always, I try to give you something that sort of will give you some idea of the layout and how you can place things. And here it is. So here we have an adventuring party, and over here is an entranceway. So I've got a couple of little kobolds who are setting traps. So traps quite often will be at entranceways. Okay, entranceways are locations they would set traps, but also don't forget to set traps in the floor or in the ground, along the walls and in the ceiling. What you don't want to do is make it too obvious where the traps would be set. If you always set them in the entrance of a passageway or on a door, then the players are always going to look there. And the idea of a trap is it doesn't get detected, and they'll open up that location or move into that location, and then something bad will happen. Now, the types of traps that kobolds will use, anything from slowing them down to being deadly to being completely fatal. So pit traps, collapsing ceilings, dart traps, rolling murder boulders, anything that can possibly be set up. Things that are a bit heavier, it's like a murder boulder would be harder for a kobold to do because of their lack of strength. And they aren't necessarily going to be all packed in one room. They can be scattered, but they'll also have a system where they can retreat easily and then seek additional assistance. So as I said, they might have like a statue. This is a statue here, but maybe they have a statue that they've found that they revere or worship, like a dragon of some kind. So I have here a letter opener, as it happens, and it's shaped like a dragon. So it makes a good set piece if you're wanting to use kobolds. I can't show you clearly where it is because when I placed it over here at the back here, you can't see it. It's just the camera doesn't capture it. But something like that, or an actual full-blown dragon might be residing in one of the chambers that they protect. So when it comes to setting up your tactics for a combat, if the kobolds don't have the protection of a dragon, make sure that the area is heavily trapped and a lot of the passageways are just too tight to move down easily. And make sure you're using cover. So move out of cover, use your slings. So that might be, if they've got a sling, they might move out, take a shot with their sling, and then move back into cover, okay? Wherever that might be on your battlefield. The other thing is, I find that a lot of people assume that kobolds will go straight into melee or close quarter combat, and that's actually very unusual. They'll only do that if they're absolutely forced to do so. They're much more likely to make attacks at range and draw the characters into the location so that they can fall into their traps and then pepper them with fire, rather than running into combat or allowing themselves to be pushed into combat. Remember, they can still move 30 feet, so there's nothing wrong with moving them back after you've fired your sling. Now, if you do wind up in a situation where there is some sort of combat taking place, so maybe the group moves up into here, sets off some traps, and the players have to deal with that. One of the things that would be common is if there is some sort of melee combat taking place, that swarming one individual. Okay, one individual being swarmed is not an unusual thing to happen, and then you can start using something like pack tactics. This is where you would definitely use pack tactics and move yourself into a position where you can do hit as often as you possibly can. Kobolds aren't really going to do a lot of damage with a dagger. It's only 4 hit points on average, and you're only rolling a 4-sided dice and adding to that +2. So it's not very much. The most you're going to get is a 6 unless you get a critical hit, which means it's really important to be rolling on advantage and using those pack tactics if you wind up in melee combat. Okay, so what happens if a kobold actually starts taking injuries? If they start getting hurt, then have your kobold flee using either movement, dodge, or disengage. It's really up to you. If there are already kobolds in combat, they're probably going to disengage and move. So take the disengage action, which is an action to do so, and move back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of the way. Certainly that's one way you can flee. If they panic, you might decide to make a morale check, which would be a wisdom check, DC 10, and you just roll it on your 20-sided dice to make your check. And if they fail, okay, then they flee. And you would then maybe have them dash rather than taking the disengage action or dodging. Then maybe taking something like the move followed by an action, which is a dodge, or move and disengage, or move and dash. All options for fleeing. And I've covered fleeing in combat before. Now, a group of kobolds that is completely outnumbered. So let's get rid of the dragon. There's no dragon here. There's only 4 kobolds here, and we'll ditch the rest. We'll push them off the map. Okay? They're now outnumbered. This is a good time when I would start considering using something like a morale check, that wisdom check of DC 10. You can set that higher if you would like, and then start seeing if you don't have to roll it more than once. One roll is, don't need to roll for every single kobold. Make one roll. If they fail, they flee. And how you flee is really up to you. As I said, I've already talked about 3 different ways you can do that. So, I think we've covered all the basics. Stay with long-range weapons. Use the sling as much as you possibly can. When you've got no other option, then use pack tactics and move in and use daggers. And as they start taking damage, they will flee. And remember, you can negotiate with kobolds. They are certainly willing to do so. They speak Draconic and Common, so most of the time it should not be an issue for your player characters to talk to them. Unless, of course, they've already got themselves into a bad position and the kobolds think they can capitalize on that and they will not parley. Okay, so I think that's covered pretty much everything I wanted to discuss today on kobolds. I want to open it up to other people because we haven't had an awful lot of feedback from other people about how they use their kobolds. So we will discuss that very, very shortly. But look, if you found this video helpful or informative, please share and like the video. And more importantly, if you're not already subscribed, hit the subscribe button and the bell button if you want to get notified when I go live and when I publish a new video. And I do live streams all the time. If you watch my channel, you know this is quite common for me to do this. On top of that, if you want to support my channel, then watch more of my videos. There are going to be more videos on monster tactics. There are going to be more videos on pretty much everything. Dungeon Master and player. We are going to be starting to open up for the player very shortly. I want to also reiterate, I don't do Patreon. So even if you watch my videos and I get a bit of AdSense revenue, I don't do Patreon. But down in the description there are affiliate links. You can buy stuff online. I get a small commission. You pay exactly the same price. And hey, look, honestly, that's actually one of the best ways you can support me, short of just watching my videos, okay? And you don't even have to buy the thing I've linked to. And hey guys, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Okay, that was pretty quick. Alright, so hi Carson, thank you. The thumbs up is great. If I've hit the nail on the where it needs to be. If I've made it clear and it seems like it makes sense to you, then great, that's awesome. A lot of this material that I have been talking about, I actually wrote last year, and I delivered some of it in workshops. So I have talked about Kobolds before, but I thought it would be sensible to sort of demonstrate to you how that might look by actually using some miniatures and moving things around. And although I haven't done an awful lot of that, I certainly know that I am willing to do more of it if people like that sort of thing. But I want to point out that if you weren't part of the live stream, look, give your feedback in the chat box before I leave, or otherwise you can just leave a question or some feedback. Even if you don't agree with me, look, there's so little information on how you should use your Kobolds in combat for Dungeons & Dragons 5e that getting a discussion going down in the comments is really useful, even if the stuff that you're saying contradicts what I say, because it's going to be useful not only for me but for somebody else. And the only way we're going to get any kind of a resource that people can use is if we start talking about how we use our monsters in the game of Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Alright, Carson, what have you got here? Couldn't have explained it better, actually. Alright, great. I'm glad that hit it on the nail. Good. Eric, this is cool. Are they weaker than goblins? Yes, Kobolds are weaker than goblins. They've got a slightly lower armor class because they don't usually have shields, although you could give them a shield if you wanted to. They tend to stick with just a sling or a dagger. Remember that what you see in the monster manual for the Kobold is the standard Kobold, and you should absolutely change your monsters round, add things to them, shake things up. Otherwise you'll have players who just read the entire monster manual. I've had it happen to me many times, and they'll start arguing with you because I know that monster should have less hit points than that. That one should have died. Fred, what's going on? So make sure you change things up. They do have a lower armor class, they do have less hit points, and also too, really they can't do quite as much damage, and the range of their weapons isn't quite as good. The short bow is certainly a better option compared to a sling, in my opinion. And overall, yeah, sunlight sensitivity is a bit of a bummer. It's a bit of a bummer for a Kobold, because it means that moving around during the day is going to be incredibly difficult. Okay, I think I've covered everything that everybody wanted to ask. If you didn't get a chance to ask your questions or give me feedback or argue the point with me, which is fine, then you can put that down in the comments. That's always good too. And hey guys and gals, I'll see you next time.